Hello, welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. I'm very fortunate today because I have two of the descendants of Eddie Cantor. Yes, next to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Eddie Cantor was the one that everybody's grandparent had to be home on Sunday night to watch his show. Well, my first guest, Brian Gari, has written Close Encounters of the Celebrity Kind. Here he is on A Funny Thing Happened on My Way to My Stress Test with his grandfather, Eddie Cantor. And on the other is his grandfather's friend, Jack Benny. But it's great, and they're all published by Bear Mountain.
Bear Manor.
Bear Manor. I've always called it Mountain.
Everybody
Anyhow,
is.
welcome, Brian Gary.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. What was it like growing up as his grandson?
Well, I didn't know him as a very famous man, particularly. I really knew him just as my grandpa. And It was fun to be around him, despite the fact that he was quite up there in age by the time I got to know him. And there was an oxygen tent in his room. But he did tricks for me from his old days when he was in vaudeville. He knew how to do magic tricks. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And your mother was what number daughter?
The fifth. The youngest daughter of Eddie Cantor. Yes.
Yeah. So when he was singing All Those Eyes and Margie, etc., did he ever write a song for her?
Well, he wasn't as much of a songwriter as one might think. He wrote one big song, which today everybody knows. The little kids, old people know it. Da 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 da, the Merry Melodies cartoon theme song.
Oh,
and he was the co-writer on that song, and he actually did have a hand in writing that song, quite a big hand in writing the song. But other than that, no, he didn't really write his hits.
Did it help having him as a grandfather, although you don't carry the name, getting work?
Not at all, because in my early days as a songwriter, probably when I was in my teens, late teens, and certainly my 20s, I tried not to utilize his name in any circumstances. I don't know if that was the best idea, but I didn't want to trade on his name. I don't know if it would have helped me per se, because the kind of work that I do in songwriting and pop music, I don't know if it would have opened up any doors in particular.
Where did you go to college?
I didn't go to college. That was the incredible thing. In New York City, where I grew up, when I was graduating, just as I was graduating high school, which is my last 2 years, I went to kind of a theatrical high school. A lot of models and actresses.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, right? Well, listen, going to an all-boys school before that for 5 years was enough. That put me over the top. So having those next 2 years at this kind of more theatrical atmosphere was better, and it was a little bit better. And I remember I took the PSATs, and if anybody out there knows the SAT, this is torture. I mean, it's an all-day affair.
Yeah.
And once I took the PSATs, I left there like fragmented. I couldn't believe that they made us test for that many hours. And then they said, and next year you're going to take the SATs. And I said, not me.
Yeah.
And it frightened a lot of people. And they said, well, you have to take them to go to college.
Did you study any particular musical instrument?
Very slightly. I took, first I took piano lessons from my mother. I learned how to play piano from my mother when I was about 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I could sight read at that time. But it didn't, I wasn't thrilled with having to work at this, you know?
Yeah.
And by the time I was 10 years old, I had seen Haley Mills in a movie called The Parent Trap.
Right.
And she, in my dreams, was playing the guitar in the movie, and I thought she really was playing the guitar. In fact, we were just talking before the show about the Sherman Brothers. They wrote her big hit, Let's Get Together.
Yeah.
And I thought, in my prepubescent mind, that I could get a date with Haley Mills if I learned how to play the guitar.
Yeah.
So I told my parents that I need to play the guitar. And they bought me the cheapest piece of junk that you could ever imagine, where your fingers bleed from trying to play this. And they sent me to a guitar teacher named Roy Smeck, who was the wizard of the strings. And a lot of people out there might remember that he was one of the key guitar and ukulele players of the 30s and 40s. He taught me a little bit of the instrument. And then I took it from there when the Beatles came along.
Now, let's talk about some of these close encounters of the celebrity kind. Jack Benny.
Jack Benny, I didn't get to know all that well, and I want to emphasize that in this book, I don't really tell stories about people that I didn't have big, some kind of a real interaction with. This is not about shaking someone's hand, which was more of the Jack Benny story. I went to the Waldorf Astoria in New York to accept an award, not by myself. My parents took me, but with my sister, and we went to accept awards on behalf of my grandfather for his humanitarianism. And I was all of 10 years old.
Yeah.
So that, and my interaction with Jack Benny was posing for the picture that's on the cover.
For those who are of an age that maybe do not remember Eddie Cantor, let's talk how successful he was with the Ziegfeld Follies.
The Ziegfeld Follies was really a huge part of his early days.
Yeah.
This is when he first started, and he really became a huge success.
Sort of like television today.
Well, yeah.
If you're a success there, you are a success.
Yes, it reached a lot of people being in the Follies.
Yeah.
So that got him started. Ziegfeld loved him, and it got him into, from there, movies.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're making whoopee.
Well, yeah, Whoopee was 1930, and that was that song, Making Whoopee, written by Gus Kahn and Walter Donaldson.
And then comes Margie and the songs for films that he was entitled to, really, as a composer.
He co-wrote one song in a movie called, the song was for Palmy Days, and it was There's Nothing Too Good for My Baby.
Yeah.
But other than that, all the songs were written for Eddie Cantor.
Yeah. And the Colgate Comedy Hour?
Yes, that was 1950.
Yeah.
Only time that Ed Sullivan was ever beaten in the ratings was by Eddie Cantor on Sunday nights when he would do the Colgate Comedy Hour.
Then we come to Danny Thomas.
Oh, in the book?
Yes.
Well, the Danny Thomas story, I'll tell you really quickly, is as you mentioned earlier, did it open any doors for you using the Eddie Cantor name? It's one of the few times that I called up Danny Thomas because I had seen him on The Tonight Show doing a song that was an unknown song. And I thought, well, in those days, a songwriter would approach anyone, especially Danny Thomas. Maybe he'll do your song on the show. So I called him up at his hotel, and I can't repeat the words that he said when he got on the phone about his ear, but he had an earache, and there was an adjective that goes with that earache. And he was not the friendliest. I told him who I was, that I was Eddie Cantor's grandson. And he asked me, I said, I have songs for you. And he says, you do? He says, are they published? And I said, very proudly, yes, they are. He says, then I'm not interested.
Oh, I love that line.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And I thought, how can you not be interested? They're published. Isn't that great? No, it's not. I said, well, why not? He says, because I publish songs myself.
Yeah.
And I said, oh. And I was off the phone with him, and nothing ever happened.
Neil Sedaka.
Well, Neil Sedaka, I go back a long way with. Neil Sedaka, I wrote a fan letter to when I was about 13 years old.
Yeah.
And I still have that postcard that was sent back to me when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
And we've been connected, over the years to this day.
What has been your most successful song?
I think having had a show on Broadway. I had a show called Late Night Comic on Broadway. And even though the show didn't last a long time, the album has done well over the years. And I had Rupert Holmes recently sang the song on the album, so...
Not too bad.
Not bad. And on the album itself, I have Paul Schaefer and Tony Roberts and a lot of big stars of Broadway singing.
All right. Next to you is a guitar. How about picking it up and playing for us? What was the best song from that show?
Well, I might as well do a little bit of the title song. I don't think there's any need to play the entire song through because you can get the song. But I wrote it when I was at the comedy clubs where Jerry Seinfeld was and all these people. And somebody asked me to write a song about for their nightclub act, and this is what I came up with. Stayed up at the diner half the night. Tried my best to get the new bit right. But the jokes were the worst. And the comic right behind him said he wrote the whole thing first and threw it out. Late night comic, your audience is gone, but still you grab that microphone and still you carry on. Late night comic,
lovely. That
Thank you.
is lovely. Did that close the first act?
You know, that's a very funny story behind that. I'll tell you very quickly. They tried to remove that song from the show. Now, what show has the title song removed?
Yeah.
It's one of those crazy things which helped the demise of
Yeah.
my Broadway musical. So it was in the show somewhere in the first act, and then it was supposed to be reprised
Yeah.
in the second act. And they took it out of the first act and left the reprise in that no one understood why it was in the
Yeah.
show at all at that point. It was
That
it made no
lovely
sense.
melody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was really a very heartfelt song for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I spent a lot of time with these comedians
Yeah.
at the clubs, and they get on at 3 a.m.
And you were the different one because you were a singer, not just the comic. And who was the singer who took exception because you were opening for her and she said, nobody has two singers.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was my story about Morgana King. And that came to me at the last minute. I remembered that story and put it in
Yeah.
the book. But yeah, Morgana King, jazz singer and legendary jazz singer. I didn't know who she was at the time, but I had heard about her a little bit. And yes, I was opening for her, and she didn't know I was opening for her. And she found out that I was going to sing.
Yeah.
And she went ballistic because she didn't want a singer to open for her. And I'll let people read the story in the book as to how it ended.
Another person who I would say was one of the first people I ever interviewed, but at his house. And with him playing the piano for me, he had just come back from lecturing at Harvard. And he was just so charming, as he is in this picture with his flower in the lapel. And he played Stormy Weather and the music from Raintree County.
Which he wrote.
Yeah,
Yes,
Johnny Green.
Johnny Green.
Yeah.
Well, I had met his daughter, Kathy, at a Jimmy Webb concert, and we hit it off very well, and we actually started singing together. She liked my songs, I liked her songs. She was very contemporary, a different kind of songwriter from her father. And she invited me back to her house in his house on Bedford Drive. We passed by there today, and it's very nostalgic for me because I had an evening there at his house.
And he was married to the beautiful Bunny Green, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very tall as well.
Yeah.
You know, she was tall, and Kathy was very tall, is very tall.
Yeah.
So, but it was I was all of, I think, 19 years old.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
And he made tongue, which you hated.
Well, don't spoil that story, but should I tell you now?
Of course.
All right.
Yeah.
The story is that I was working with Kathy in Johnny Green's house, and Johnny Green came in, and he was a gourmet cook. And Johnny Green ended up inviting me to dinner, and the one thing that I told Kathy I could never eat is tongue. And that's what Johnny Green served with raisin sauce for dinner.
Poor Brian.
Well-
Listen, Brian, I've loved talking to you, and we'll do it again. But for the moment, we're going to take a short pause,
Okay.
and when we come back, we will have Janet Cantor Gari. And
I know her.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I taught you how to play the piano.
She did.
Yes. Will you sign my book?
I'd love to.
And we'll be back after a short pause.